I'm so honored today to have Brooke Romney with me on the podcast. She is someone who I've actually looked up to and admired for many years. And the funny thing is one time we were at an exercise class and it was kind of a fun event, and she was next to me. And it's just not very fair how small the pictures on Instagram are because you see and you like kind of know, but also you share a lot of words and graphics. And so we're sitting there and we're kind of in the cool down and we're stretching, and I look over and I'm like, "You look so familiar. What's your name?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm Brooke Romney." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, of course you are." I'm like, "I love you." But then it's like, "Oh, but I couldn't actually pick you out. I just knew you looked familiar." But Instagram is kind of a weird place because it does give us that everyone looks familiar sometimes, and so like attaching the name to the faces sometimes gets crazy. But the other thing is that anyone who I told that I got to interview you, every single person said, "Please tell her how much I love her." And so I
Mm.
I just it's really awesome because you really have created such a beautiful space on Instagram specifically, where you've gathered a community of people to be able to give them some education, some insight, and some beautiful words. She's a writer, she's a speaker, and a connector. So you have a few books. Right over there on my entry table, I have the 52 manners for modern day teens. That's a lot of words to say. And
Yes.
I strategically put that by a bowl of candy because I know that anytime anyone is walking in or out of my house, they're going to stop for the candy and they can't help but read the words. So I love everything that you're doing. You're a mom of four, right? Four boys.
Yes.
So fun and so wild. So she's a mom, she's a speaker, she travels and speaks with Time Out for Women and so many other things. But what else should the listeners know about you?
Well, you are so kind and generous. So I think you covered absolutely all of it. So
That's not true.
thank
No.
you. Yeah, I love being on Instagram. I love creating a community for moms. And we were talking a little bit before we hit record, but I felt like being a mom of a teen was just a really lonely place with my first kiddo. And I wanted a place where people could come and ask questions and share tips and give advice and get advice and find out what was working for different families. And it has been one of the biggest joys in my life to be able to create a place where moms of teens can come and feel uplifted and inspired, and also feel like they're not alone. There's
Yeah,
just so much power in not feeling alone in
so
our
true.
communities and in our world and in our situations. And I remember thinking, like, is this normal? Am I normal? And there's so many normals, and it's so
Yeah.
fun to be able to learn about what's normal for every family.
So true. And honestly, when I think about your account, I think you give it's a place where people can still feel hope. There's honesty happening, and there's like happy and there's hard, and but it's like all goes back to hope because we could all gather around with our conversations and our experiences that we're having as parents or teenagers, and we could feel a lot of like misery and sadness and overwhelm and frustration, and while we still can go to your Instagram and be honest about all the things that we're experiencing, it still carries that energy and that message of hope. And I think that's the most important thing. So is that something that you would say like came naturally to you, is having hope in your teenager, or having hope in yourself as a parent of teenagers?
Well, first of all, I really love that that is what you come away with, because that would be my greatest hope, truly,
Oh,
is that
I'm so
people walk
glad.
away saying that, yeah, like this is difficult, this is challenging. I don't know that I'm up for the task, but I have hope that I can do this well. When you ask if this is something that comes naturally, so my nickname growing up was Pollyanna because I would find the good in
I
all
can
of the
tell by
bad
your smile, okay?
situations.
Let's be honest. I can tell that people need to go and see the photos of you just so that they can see, because I can totally just tell by the joy in your face.
So it was, thank you so much. So that does come naturally to me. And I feel like that is a gift that I have been given with my personality. Um, but one of the things that I realized very quickly is it's easy to like look at the positive when things aren't that bad, right?
Yeah.
Like when one thing goes wrong and then you're like, well, I can see the good that it's raining. It's like
Yeah.
it's totally different when things are literally falling apart.
Mm.
or when it's completely out of your control, like you cannot control. And I think a lot of times with teenagers, that's one of the things that can feel frustrating is like, well, I can fix this if you'll let me, but you don't have the control. And so I actually probably starting in about 2008, our life took like a really interesting turn. And I felt like I was really put to the test to
Mm.
see if I was just like Pollyanna or if I had true hope. And we had all kinds of crazy things happen that required me to decide like where my foundation was, where my focus was, and if circumstances could dictate how I felt and how I saw the world, or if there was something greater inside me and a higher power that could help me understand like the joy and the hope that can come even in difficult times. And I feel like that was great preparation for me for having teenagers, being able to see life as an abundant thing, being able to see mistakes and problems and difficulties happen and know that there is light on the other side of that. And not just light on the other side, but there's light through it. And that was one of the things that I felt really powerfully, that even in some of our darkest, hardest times where there were no solutions, that I could still feel light and hope right inside of those moments.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And sometimes we have to really look for the light and believe it's there so that we can see it. Because if we're like going around with our eyes closed, like someone told me there's going to be light here, but we're not willing to open our eyes to it and to seek it and to look for it, then we might not find it. And something that keeps coming to my mind about us as parents, that when we're going through these experiences with our teens specifically, is that oftentimes we make the circumstances with them about us. And we if they are making certain decisions, or if they are feeling certain emotions, or if they are reacting in certain ways, it's like we turn around and make it about us. And anytime that we take something and make it about us, we step out of like the ability to be able to help them. I think
Mm.
when it's about me, all of a sudden I can't really help them because now I'm in survival mode of myself. And so I might be defensive. I might be angry. I might be super emotional and super sad. And so I want to help them, but all of a sudden, because I've turned around and made it about me, then I'm unable to help, which is what I really want to be doing.
Well, and you bring up such a good point. So many parents are like, I want my kids to come to me, but then you absolutely like lose it. You can't handle when they
Mm,
come to you.
mhm,
And so they're not going to come to you because they don't want, like, they love you. They don't want to cause you pain and angst and anger and grief. And so realizing that in those situations, we are the adult. We are the adult and we have to say to them so that we have to show them that we're okay so that they can start being okay. And I don't mean that by like glossing over everything and being like, oh, it's fine that your friends never invite you, get over it, right?
mhm,
Like that's not helpful. But
yeah,
instead, saying something like, that probably hurts so much.
mhm,
They're good people, right? Those are good people making kind of crappy decisions, just like we always do. Like, are there other people that might appreciate you more than
mhm,
your friends appreciate you right now? And you're so capable, you're so fun, you're so interesting. People would love to be friends with you. I love all those things about you. Like it might take a little bit. You're welcome to hang out with me tonight. Like let's go do something fun, and start looking for those people that might find value in you. You know, the opposite of that would be our kids come to us and say like, "Oh my gosh, all my friends are hanging out without me. They didn't invite me." And your reaction is, "Oh my word, I hate those kids. Those kids are the worst. Do you want me to call their mom? This is ridiculous. Next time I see them, I'm going to let them know." And they're like, "Oh, okay. Like you are not someone I can come to with problems, right? Like you blow it up, you make it bigger, you make me feel worse than I already felt." Um that's not who we need to be for our
mhm,
teens. And it's hard because we've got like that mama bear. We love our kids. We never see any problematic. We see everything everybody else says is problematic. But really showing them like we can handle what you bring to us, even if it's something way bigger than that. Even if it's like, I got caught for cheating. Like I'm in big trouble. Like my English teacher is going to give me an F.
mhm,
Okay. You've got a couple options in that situation. And one will let your kids know, like, I'm the person you come to when times are hard. And the other one will be like, do whatever you can to hide
mm,
whatever is going on in your life from your parents. They cannot handle it. And we just live in a world that doesn't allow us to be that second set of parents. it's too difficult, it's too stressful, it's too hard. And so we really, really have to step up to the plate, even when it's hard for us, and say like, I can handle this, even if you actually can't, and you're hyperventilating inside and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
how in the world is this going on? And how were they exposed to this? Or I can't believe this person is talking about this. We have to be the person that's like calm and steady and says, okay, yep, that sounds like a very uncomfortable conversation to be happening on the bus on the ride to your basketball game. Like that's not something that I want you to be exposed to, instead of like, freaking
Yeah,
out. Were
like,
you a
I'm
part
gonna
of
solve
that?
this
What did you
problem for
do?
you. Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
take this from you and I'm gonna go solve it, because what I'm saying when I do that is that I don't trust you to be able to navigate it either. I
Yes.
I I
Yeah,
also
that's
am
so
like
smart.
I'm also like a very visual person, and so when you were talking about, they're coming to you, and they're coming to you because they have like a load on their shoulders. They have like this issue that they're facing, and this struggle, this problem, and it's weighing on their shoulders. And then they come to you, and then your reaction, if you are showing like this big reaction and big emotion, then all of a sudden it adds to the load on their shoulders. Instead of you trying to help lighten it for them, it's like now they're dealing with yours also, because so sitting in that and validating their feelings or emotions, like, without, and then turning around and helping them find a way to be able to problem solve, to navigate it on
Mhm.
their own. Like, it is not for us to carry, and it is not something that we actually can even solve, because whenever the parents gets involved, it actually gets worse, I feel like.
Yes, almost, unless there's something that's like
Right.
really like problematic that's
Right.
happening, I would agree with you. It almost always makes it worse for your kid. Like, and
Mhm.
that is no one's intention, is to make things
Right.
harder for their kid. I can't tell you how many times somebody will say like, I think my kid's over it, but I'm still like really mad. And it's like, okay, that was your kid situation, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
like, somebody says like, my kid, let's say he doesn't get playing time like on his team,
Mhm. Yeah.
and he's okay. Like he realizes, because teens are really smart and they're very aware. And so they'll look at their team and be like, legit, I'm like the ninth best player on the team.
Mm.
So the fact that I'm getting in like a couple of minutes every game is kind of sucky, but like it's probably right. And the parent is like so mad, freaking out, trying to figure it out for him, calling the coach, and that kid's like, hey, I'm fine. Like, I'm okay. I
Yeah,
don't
and now all of
I
a
don't
sudden
deserve that time.
they feel responsible
Yeah.
for their parents' disappointment of them not being in the top 5.
Right.
And
Right. And
is
it's
that
like,
actually
that's a
what we
lot.
want? Yeah, like, we
That's
don't want them to do that.
no, like ideally their energy would be put into like improving and getting better, or maybe even like finding a new activity if this one isn't
Mhm.
really resonating. And
Mhm.
instead we're like, we put so much of our own time and energy and like anger into something. They're like, okay, like I better perform, I better do this. And it doesn't usually work out
Yeah, it
very
feels
well.
like support, it feels like encouragement, it feels like fighting for, but really it's fighting against, and putting this extra pressure on our kids that they don't necessarily need.
Yeah. Yep.
I
I
see that.
I really like that. Instead of fighting for, you're fighting against.
Yeah,
So
and not intentionally. And so, like, if you're listening and you find you're like looking back at conversations or experiences that you've had, and now all of a sudden you're like, oh no, are you telling me I'm a bad mom because I like really care about this? Like, no, we're not saying at all that you're a bad mom, but we are saying, like, look at the situation and see if there's a way that you can show them that you're on their team, but you can also help them navigate it in a healthy way, that they still are the ones who get to work through it, because that's where we build trust with ourselves. That's where they build confidence. And that's where, when the next situation arises, like, they'll still come to you, but they're also going to have a little bit more confidence in themselves to be able to handle the situations.
I love that you bring up self-confidence. I had a mom send me a message and she was like, hey, like, how do I help my teenager have more self-confidence? And the tricky thing with self-confidence is it's self. You have to
Mhm.
have confidence in yourself. And so giving our teens experiences where they are proud of themselves because of what they've been able to accomplish on their own. It's
Mhm.
hard to have self-confidence if your mom does everything for you, if she fights every battle, if she paves the way, like kind of like that lawnmower parenting. You can be completely involved and devoted and absolutely dedicated to your children and give them opportunities to prove themselves to themselves. When I was giving her advice, let your kids start with small things that give them confidence and build them up for what they do. One of the things that's really hard for us to adjust to from little kids to older kids is our kids don't believe us if what we're saying isn't true.
It's
Like
so,
when
yeah.
your kid is 5 and
Yeah.
you're like, "You're the best dancer. You're so beautiful. I love the way you dance. You're an incredible dancer." She'll believe that. But when she's 12 and she doesn't make the team she wanted to make, sorry, like I'm not a good dancer. Whether my mom tells me that 100 times or not, I just had a life experience that says like I'm not as good as I thought I was. And so as we give them opportunities to build themselves, so like starting really small, something like, hey, I need you to be in charge of dinner on Thursday nights, and letting them do it, like
Mhm.
letting them make the mistakes, letting them burn the chicken, all those things, and then being so excited about what they were able to accomplish. Those are the things that give our kids confidence. Us just telling them they're awesome 200 times a day
Mm-mm.
does absolutely nothing for
Mm-mm.
their self-confidence once they become teenagers, because they see reality and they're like, well, I'm not really doing anything. I'm watching Netflix all day.
Yeah.
So I have no self-confidence.
It's funny because so when my twins were really little, my twins came first. And one day my sister-in-law posted a video of, or a picture of her son making his own peanut butter and jelly sandwich on the counter. And I literally saw it and I got like hives. I was like, what do you mean? What are you doing? Like, oh, what a mess. Like, you're going to have to clean it up. Like, his gross feet are on the counter, his hands. Like, I was seriously like in judgment for a minute. And something happened in my brain in that moment. And I was like, she's a genius, because what she's doing is saying, like, here's the bread, here's the peanut butter, here's the jelly, here's a knife. Go ahead. You can do this. And honestly, that day something changed in me. And I was like, here's the bread, here's the peanut butter, and here's the knife, here's the jelly. Look, oh yeah, great. Do you like to cut it in a triangle? Do you like to cut it in a square, like what, a rectangle? Like, what do you love? And then kindergarten came and I was like, everyone's buying Valentine's invitation, like the Valentine's cards. I went to the store and I bought all the stickers I could find, all the doilies, markers, whatever. And I said, here, you get to make Valentines. And they were the cutest things I've ever seen in my entire life. I celebrated them. I was like, oh, I love how you did this, and I looked for details that I loved. I handed them cereal boxes to make bird houses with. I like constantly something happened to me that I was like, oh, little tiny things all along the way are going to build their confidence and their trust in themselves. They would do their hair and I would say, oh my goodness, your hair looks amazing. You make sure to tell your teacher you did your hair today all by yourself. Oh my, because it was like a disaster. But this second
Right.
grader just felt like, wow, I look like I braided 6 braids in random places on my hair. I am killing it. Right. And
Yeah.
so even if it wasn't that, like eventually there was so much trust being built. And then those twins going on in life, there's been situations where one will score higher than the other in competition. And so it's forced me to go back to confidence. Like, I'm so proud of you for being willing to put yourself out there on a stage. I'm proud of you to compete
Mhm.
against people that you know and love, even though there's only going to be one winner, or there's always going to be a higher score. Like, it takes a lot of courage to even be willing to do that. So focusing on not the actual like outcome of anything that they're doing,
Right.
but the bravery that it takes, the hard work that was put into it, actually even celebrating other successes. Like, I know it's probably feels really kind of not great to have to
Yeah.
celebrate someone else beating you, but if you can learn how to celebrate others, your life's going to be a lot better and a lot more fun.
That's actually one of the manners in my second book. I feel so strongly
Yeah.
about kids who learn how to celebrate other people. Like they go on to be adults that have such an abundant mindset, and they are lifted in the process of them lifting others. And I've been thinking a lot about my parents and how they raised me, and the things that I'm grateful for. And one of the things that keeps coming to mind is they taught me that I was absolutely capable of
Mhm.
solving problems.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's really cool as I think about my growing up experiences is they still did plenty for me. Like my mom did my wash and folded it probably until I left for college, right? So we all like pick and choose things. But just because she did that didn't mean that she didn't raise a daughter who was like, yeah, like I can figure crap out, you
Mhm.
know? And I think it's so important because everyone's going to have those different things that, you may have your kids cook, and someone else may have them figure out their school schedule all on their
Mhm.
own. Giving them those opportunities. And then the other thing that I love that you talked about is I feel so strongly about complimenting kids for their character, for who they actually
Mhm.
are,
Yes.
because then they start to see who they are. Like sometimes as a teenager, you don't really get who you are, and you need other people to mirror that for you. And so, as you complimented your daughter for being someone who celebrates others, she walked away and thought, oh, I'm a celebrator. I'm a celebrator of other people. That's an incredible character trait to have. When
Mhm.
I talk to my son about being like the best teammate on his basketball team as opposed to scoring the most points, he walks away from that game not like tallying how many points he scored. He walks away saying, like, I'm such a great teammate. Like, I'm such a great teammate. That transfers to life. Even if he doesn't make the basketball team, right? Even if he goes to high school and doesn't make the team, that
Or if he
doesn't change
makes
the
the
fact that
team and then has an injury and his basketball career is done.
over,
Yeah.
right? It's like I wasn't like so focused as a mom on saying like you're such a good point scorer because that goes away. But who you are, the fact that you're a great teammate, that works in so many situations. The fact that your daughter is someone who celebrates others, the fact that someone is willing to try new things, right? Like, so maybe your kid decides to choose a new sport in high school and he is great at it. Instead of focusing on like, oh yeah, you found your path, you found your passion, saying like, I am so proud of you for trying something new. That is the coolest thing because guess what?
Mhm.
That translates forever. Him being like
Forever.
a fast runner, that can come and go as we all know as adults, right? As our talents wane and wax.
But, like,
Um,
you look at you showing up to practice every day, or look at you beating your score because this consistent work is paying off for you, just
yes.
pointing out those things is so powerful.
Well, and I think our kids too, they're so smart in what they take away. And so as we compliment like character traits that are important to us and important to like adulthood, they realize like that's more important to my parents than if I take
Yeah,
first place. Like
so
they
true.
just walked away thinking like, so it's okay if they lose, right? Like you said, like it's okay if
Absolutely.
you lose because my mom was over here celebrating the fact that I tried something new. That's awesome.
Mhm.
I am a person who tries new things, right? And how
Yeah.
cool to be able to take that in adulthood. You can't take the fact that you're a great dribbler really into adulthood unless you make the NBA, which that would be very cool.
But
But
even s
it's
but even still, if there's not fulfillment in who they are as a person, we all know that success without fulfillment is misery, It's like they still need to
so
know who they
true.
are and why they matter and what makes them makes them special, and it's not necessarily only because they're basketball players.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. That's such a great point because if success made you feel fulfilled, there would be a lot less people in the spotlight who are struggling so much.
It's
So,
it's absolutely true. So this weekend I was away at a retreat and it was it was just like a internal type situation where it was like all a lot of just like thought about myself or my family. And on the way home, I decided to take some time and voice memo each one of my kids and even my husband. And I took some time to tell them the things that I notice about them and the things that I love about our relationship together and the things that like the gifts and the things that make them special and my hopes for them and also just like my desire to love them fully. And I'm going to be honest with you, it was very vulnerable for me. And it was kind of like I actually started and when I was voice memoing, I was like, I don't know if I'm even going to send these. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm just because it was so fresh on my heart, like just thinking about all the things that I hope that they know about themselves, I hope that they accept and love and embrace and celebrate about themselves. Um, so that's my first tip is that maybe you're not brave enough to like do it and know you're gonna send it. Maybe you could just do it for yourself because it felt a lot more comfortable when I didn't know for sure if I was gonna send them. And then as soon as I got done recording all of them, and it was like super emotional for me to speak those words out loud. Um, then I was like thinking about if I had received something like that from my own mom, like what could that have done for me? Or and so then all of a sudden I lost that fear of rejection maybe, like if they were like, "Oh, this is weird, this feels uncomfortable." And maybe they got them and they thought it was uncomfortable and maybe they thought it was weird, but that I believe that when we can we call out the gifts that we see in our children, and even if they don't believe them right now, if we give them something to go back to, maybe in a time when they're struggling or facing some insecurities or sadness or whatever it is, like them just knowing that someone that they love so much can see them in a different way. I just felt like, I don't know. I just think that maybe that's something that all the kids could really benefit from if we are willing to do that.
Well, I will say like a gigantic amen to what you just expressed because um, I grew up with a dad that did that all the time.
Mm,
Like even into my life right now, I remember like I would get phone calls from my dad and he would hold the phone up to a song on the radio
no.
and tell me like I was listening to this song and I was thinking about you and how incredible you are and how beautiful
Mm.
you are and how lucky I am to be your dad. And I was that changes a person.
I have
That
goosebumps all over my body.
that changes who you are and who you think you can be. And because I had a dad that did that, like I try to do that with my kids. And you know what? I have 4 boys. And I will honestly sometimes send like a message pouring out my heart about how amazing they are, and I will get like a thumbs up, like a
Did you
literally
see
like
my
a
thumb?
yes,
My thumb came up because I already
yes.
knew, but it's not about that. It's not the response that we
It's
get from
well,
them.
it's not about me. It's
Mm-mm.
about them. And I was like, if I can help them see who they are as
Mm.
often as possible. And I mean, obviously it's like not a daily thing,
Yeah, no.
but I just like I want them to be able to look back and be like, my mom thought I was so incredible. And not because I did all the things or I was
Mm-mm.
this handsome or,
Mm-mm.
I was voted the prom king. It's because she like saw who I really was. And anytime we as parents can have that vision for our kids, especially during those years where they don't have it for themselves,
Mhm.
and we can help them understand that, like I think that they grow up into adults that are secure, who know who they are, who have a path. Doesn't mean they make a million mistakes. Of course it does. But it also
Don't we
means
all?
that even when they make mistakes, they know that they have a fan, like
Mhm.
someone is in their balcony cheering them on. And I love that you did that. I've been doing a gratitude challenge this month. Every day I text somebody, like
I
anyone in
love
my
that.
life. And it's been really powerful for me. I did something similar where I texted each child and just said how grateful I was for them and the things that I saw in them. And like I wasn't bowled over by their responses, right? I did get a love you from one of
Mhm.
them. Um, but that's not what it was about. It was about
Mm-mm.
like me taking every opportunity to remind them of who they really are.
Totally. And even sharing this, I'm like, I'm not sure. Like, it feels, I actually feel like I have to lean into some humility, even being willing to share this with listeners. Like, this is what I did. Cause this is not like, oh, I'm a great mom. That's not how it feels. But it does feel like I had this thought that this could really help. And so hoping that maybe your daughter, maybe your son, this is something that they need to hear out of your mouth. And it's not what you do, but who you are and who I see you becoming and who I believe that you will be. And it really was so cool and such a great experience. And I mean, I did get you made my week, and that was like awesome. But also I got like that means a lot. Thank you. Or thank you so much. Love you, and it isn't
Mhm.
about, and that's actually something that we have to do as parents is like give without expectation of, because it's not personal. They're trying to form their independence. They're trying to like trust themselves. They're trying to figure out who they are. And so even though it hurts a lot, I feel like for me at least, because you go through these stages where they just want everything from you. They want you to love them. They want you to help them. They want you to, lay by them. They want all the things. And then they get to this stage where they're just like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to try, and I'm going to go like, no, you're a threat to a threat to my, what's the word I'm looking for?
Independence. Yeah.
Independence is the word. Yeah. You're a
Yeah.
threat to my independence. You are. And so they're trying to protect themselves and actually just gain confidence. So it's not personal. It's not mean, even though it sometimes feels bad, but seeing it for what it is.
I love that you brought that up too, because there's definitely those stages and those times. I think, especially with moms. And I don't know, maybe it's because I have only boys, so that's the only relationship I know. But there's definitely a time when they're like, like, I don't like the whole mom thing. Like, And so doing what we can to stay connected. And I do want to speak to one thing. Asking our kids to engage in relationships with us is also not wrong. It's oftentimes what they need. And
Yeah.
I think it's really important that we model healthy relationships for our kids in our homes. And so there have been times in my life, because I'm a peacemaker and I don't want to cause ruffles or whatever, I
Amen.
will let my kids like pile on me. And I think
Mm,
there's a place for that as a parent. We have to be able to take some of that. But with each of my kids, all three of them that are older, there got to a point where I felt like they were really like disrespecting and taking advantage of me and of my kindness and of my
mm,
willingness to be there for them. And I didn't want to ruffle feathers, but I had a thought that it's really important that they see what a healthy relationship is, especially between a man and a woman.
mm.
And
So
that
good.
was like a huge light bulb moment for me. And so with each one of them, I have been able to talk to them not in like a threatening way and not in a bad moment, but just to be able to say, hey, the way you're treating me isn't okay. That's not okay with me for you to take advantage and and lie and
Yeah.
break the rules and never follow through on your end. That's not okay. And one of the things that I found from that, when they would and they were all really good, like even in their bad places they could understand, like, okay, I've been
Yeah.
kind of a jerk to my mom.
Mhm.
And so when they would come to me and say, like, I'm really sorry, sometimes they didn't realize that they were doing it, which is totally valid. Sometimes you're just going through a tough time. And sometimes they did, and they were trying to manipulate or get what they wanted
Mhm.
or things like that. But one of the things that I noticed is when I came to them and talked about like healthy relationships and how important it is in order for me to love them my best, that they can give some. And I'm like, I'm willing to give like 99, right? But I do need you to give that one. And I do need you to show respect. And I do need you to be kind. Um, and we talked about those types of things. And one of the things that I thought was so important when I did that and when I required a little bit from them, our relationship got so much better.
Mhm.
They wanted to be needed by me.
Yep.
They needed that reminder that, like, oh, good relationships go both ways. Like, and that was important to me. And so sometimes I think as parents, we do our best to just be there for our kids. And sometimes, especially for moms, I think that turns into something that's slightly unhealthy. And that's
Mhm.
not what we want to
Yeah.
model for our kids. And I love the fact that when I required a little bit more from them, we both felt more fulfilled from our relationship. And that's what I want them to remember too, especially as they go on to their own relationships and marriage relationships, that both people have to be giving. And when both people are giving, that creates a really healthy, fulfilling relationship for both people.
That is so, so good. And I love that you said that you had an actual conversation with them. And I actually always joke about your book that it's all the conversations you didn't realize you needed to have with your kids. It's like,
Right?
and you want to know what I said to my husband the other day was like, you have to talk about everything. You think that there's specific things that you need to talk to your kids about. It's actually everything. It's all the things you think you need to, and it's also all the things you don't think you need to. It's like we have to have the conversations. And I have been so grateful for your book because and your books, your second book is out. I've been so grateful because it just gives you like a little reminder, like a little prompt, like, oh, this is like something important to talk about. And oh, I didn't think I would actually need to tell them to, look an adult in the eyes and have a conversation, or like not be on your phone constantly, even if you're in a car ride, or say please and thank you, or, all of the little tiny things that we've learned in our experience, but they haven't yet really learned or experienced. And so just those reminders of how to act and expectations, like, and it's a beautiful conversation because I love a third party. I love whenever there's this
Yes.
little tiny third party where it's like, oh, did you see this? Like, that's such a great idea. Like, have you thought of that? And it sparks the conversation. And I think it deepens the relationship that you have with them, but it also gives them tools for their lives. So where did this idea for you to write these books come from?
Oh, so the idea came because I had my own kids and I was like,
Hmm.
what in the heck? Like, I feel like we model all these things. And when I watch
Yeah.
you in the world, it's like you've never heard of them.
Hmm.
And as I thought, and different children gleaned different things,
Mm,
right? And so I would watch one who kind of got a lot of it, and he seemed to be having a much more successful
Mm.
experience, right? And and then I watched another one who was struggling with getting it, and he was having a very difficult experience. And more than anything, when I watched my kids, I was like, there are some really, really small and simple things that can give you a much higher percentage of having a successful life, successful relationships, being someone people would like around, being someone that's accountable to themselves, all these things. And one of the kids like kind of got it through observation, and the other one didn't. And I was like, oh. So I actually was like, there has to be a book. There's got to be a book on Amazon.
Mm. Mhm.
So I was searching Amazon, and I was like, social norms for teenagers, things every teenager should know,
Should
how to interact correctly as a teenager, like all like I was Googling and
Yeah.
searching, and I'm like, there has to be a book about this. And there wasn't. And I was like, dang it. Like,
You're like, "I
I
guess
really
this is
need
my
that
call,"
book.
because it came yeah, and it came but it came
I
to your
really need that
mind,
book.
and you were willing to put it into action and to write it, and that's amazing. Because
Well, and
I
it's
mean, I know
funny.
how many people are loving it. I know how many people are using it, and it's very
Yeah.
powerful.
It's a really the funny thing is immediately I was like, "Oh, dang it, there's no book." And I just left it at that. Like, I
You're like,
was just like,
I guess we
"Okay,
can't the
I
problem can't be solved."
I
Yeah.
I guess I'm just gonna have to talk to him every single day." My other problem is the one that really wasn't getting it
Mm.
was the one that needed me to be his fan.
Mhm.
And so me, like, constantly trying to correct him and help him
Mm.
wasn't working. He just
Mhm.
thought I was being rude. Like, he was
Yeah.
not taking my direction well, which I think is a problem in a lot of families, which is
Like,
why
they look
people
for
really enjoy the
ways
book.
to feel, like, offended by like, "You think I'm
Uh-huh.
bad at this. If you're suggesting that I should learn this, you think I'm really bad at it, and I've never
Right.
even done anything." Yeah.
Or if you say like, "Hey, like, I need you to you should wear deodorant every day." They're like, "You think I
"You think I
smell?
stink."
You're so
Yeah.
rude." Like, "What?" You
Oh.
know, and it's like, "No, no,
Mhm.
no. You're like a 13-year-old boy. Like,
You're
that's
like,
just
"This is just
normal.
something you need
You
to
have to wear
learn."
deodorant," you know? And so, and then one day I put out on Instagram like 3 things that I wish teenagers knew,
Mm.
just like from having teens in my house
Mhm.
and like things I had observed. And I was like, dude, like, what is going on? Like,
Yeah,
you guys
totally.
all come hang out at my house and then you leave and I'm sitting right there and you like don't see me. You just walk out the door. You don't say
Mhm.
thank you or hey or anything.
Mhm.
And so I put those 3 things out and people were like so excited about it. Like, can you do more of these? Like, yes, like
Mm.
I forget to tell my kid, like, I'm just texting him from the driveway saying, like, I'm here. I don't even think to text him, like, make sure you say goodbye and thank you to the people who
Mhm.
hosted you all night, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
So people were really excited about that. And so I started doing like one a week. And then people were like, I need these printed. Like my kid doesn't have social
You, like,
media
tried
or,
with a
you know,
highlight bubble, and then you ran out of space in all your highlight bubbles. You're like, "Oh, this actually needs to
okay.
be, like, this physical thing that people can look to."
Yeah. So worked really, really hard to make it something. I knew because I have a tough crowd at my house, like for thinking that things are useful or
Yeah.
important, I was like, I need to create this so that it's so simple, it's so easy, it's visual. Like there were all these things. I was like, if I'm going to create something, it has to be useful for people who have teenagers in their home. And worked with a printer who helped me design like
Yeah.
the way that it would be displayed, and did a lot of edits and working really hard to make sure that the manners were things that would resonate with teens and saying
Mhm.
them in a way that would resonate.
Totally,
And it's
don't
just
feel
been
offensive.
such,
Yeah.
yeah, and it just has been like a huge blessing for my life and in the lives of other people. And I'm thrilled. I am thrilled to be able to, my biggest goal was not like my secondary goal was to help parents parent their teens in a way that worked. But my biggest goal was to give teens an opportunity to be successful in a world that can feel really hard. And I feel like it's helping. It's helping teens feel more successful.
It absolutely is, and honestly, so I was watching a Netflix, show the other day, and it was kind of a crazy show, but at the end, and he had been doing these horrible things, and in the end, someone close to him came and said, like, why did you do this?" And he said, "No one stopped me." And so I see this book like and that was a little bit of a dramatic thing, but honestly, sometimes they're looking for someone to say like, "No, this is not okay," or like, "Stop doing this. This is not okay behavior," but they're like testing to see if it's okay. And if no one ever comes along and says like, "Oh, you really shouldn't interrupt people when they're talking. That feels rude." Even if you think you're just adding to the conversation, what you're actually saying is, "I don't care what you're saying." And so it's like these little things that that they could go on their whole entire life, and if no one ever stops them, then they just assume it's okay, even if there's something inside
Yeah.
of them that says it's not.
Oh, I have like 1,000,000% to that. And I remember when I first started writing them, I had somebody send me a message and she said, like, I went to a really affluent boarding school. And these were things that we learned at
Mm,
school, like how to be successful in the world. Like that
interesting.
was basically like how you can be successful in the world. And as I thought about that, I was like, yeah, you shouldn't have to go to a fluent boarding school in order to
Mm-mm.
learn as a teenager how you can be successful in the world, how you can hold relationships,
Mm,
how you can be someone that someone might want to hire for a job, like
mhm.
all those things. I'm like, this should be accessible no matter how much money you make. Like, and so being able to offer an opportunity for kids to figure out how to be successful in this world for $20 was
Mhm.
like so
But also,
powerful
like,
for me.
parents, no one comes to you and says, and up until now, until you came along, but no one was saying, like, "Make sure you say this and make sure you cover this," and actually, you just have to tell them you have to tell them everything. You have to you
Well,
just have to show them all the things that you assume that they would pick up on.
well, and especially in our world, and I think that's the part that we forget is we lived in a world without
Mm,
smartphones.
mhm,
So we never had things inside of our ears. Our heads
mhm,
were never down. We were too bored. We were
mm,
observing everything our
mhm.
parents were doing.
So
Like
true.
that was actually really interesting to us because it was better than doing nothing. So we were like constantly observing, and our kids are not. They are in another world, focused on something else. And so we have to be so clear and we have to be so deliberate as we teach them so that they can pick up on those things that are really important. And I got another message from a mom, and this one was so sweet. She said, I didn't grow up in a very good home, and my parents didn't teach me things that they should have, that like were
Mhm,
important things. And she said, I have been really worried about being a mom because I don't
mm.
even know what I'm supposed to teach my kids because I didn't grow up with it. And she was like, I am learning with my kids every week with your book. And she's like, I am learning how to be the person that I want my kids to be. And I was just like, I got chills because how powerful is it to be able to be the parent that says, like, I'm going to learn this with you. Like,
Mhm,
I need to learn too. I need to get better. I want to be the person that someone feels like, will celebrate them. Or I want to
mhm.
be the person that is comfortable introducing herself to someone else because not just because that's good for me or good for the other person, but it makes the world a more connected place. And that's the kind of world I want to be a part of? So there's
Oh,
been
that's
some really, really
so
sweet
awesome.
stories.
I just think of the peace of mind too that you gave her, in that simple book that she could just know that because the little child of her was probably so terrified, like, "How am I actually don't wanna do this wrong, like, I don't really," but no one showed me, no one taught me, and just that peace of mind of, like, being able to walk through and saying, like, "It's okay." And the really cool part, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, was, like, we're all learning together. We're all like, you were
Yes.
one who was willing to kind of take the lead and create this book and have these conversations, but but you are learning with us. There are things that I'm sure have worked really well with one child and not so well with another, or been received well by one and not by another, or maybe we have to like reword some words when we're dealing with one child or another, but like, we're all in this together. And I think that's, you said your desire was to create a community where people could gather and to support each other and to truly feel hope in parenting and also in these amazing teenagers. They are
Yes, and
amazing.
it has been so much fun because I learn so much. Every time I post something, I learn through comments, I learn through ideas. Um, Even like in my manners book, somebody asked me, like, do you just have the best manners? I'm like, no. Like every time I post a manner on a Monday, I'm like, I need to work on that one. Like I could really improve on that
Same for
one.
me. Same for me. I
Yes.
get that.
And
Yes.
so like anytime I think like somebody's like, oh, you're the teen guru or something, I'm like, oh no, like I am just willing to
Mm,
put my trial and error like on display so
so
that other
beautiful.
people can help give me feedback too. I know that I've become a significantly better parent
Mhm.
because of the community that I've created, because I've learned so much from what other people know, what they've done, the things they've tried. And, even just this week, I'm like, yeah, like my husband was like, yeah, that was like not your best conversation. I'm like, yeah, I know that was not my best.
Yeah,
There's
but guess
times when
what?
I'm
You
like,
probably have the relationships that you can go and say, "Hey, I'm really sorry that that's the way that that conversation
yep,
went. Could we try that again?"
yeah,
And your
totally.
child would say yes, because it is about the intention behind what we're doing. It is about the relationship. It's about the communication and that connection that we have.
Yes, absolutely. And when you create relationships with that kind of connection and trust, like you can make a million mistakes.
Mhm.
They probably expect it, especially in certain. I've got a few like parenting blinders where I'm like trying to come around to doing things the right
Mhm.
way. And they know that, but they know that like my intent is that I love them. I want them to be successful. Um, one of the things that I like try to preach often is that your teens have to know that you're on their team.
Yep.
Like it's not them against you,
Mm-mm.
it's you two against their world. Like you want that, like there's no one in this world that wants my kids to be successful more than I do. And not my version of success, but for them to find
Mhm.
their own path to fulfillment and
Yep.
success. And when they know that, then a lot of times like your rules and your boundaries and the things you expect of them aren't something that they want to like fight against. It's something they're like, this isn't my favorite,
Mhm.
but my mom is my biggest fan. She is on my
Mhm.
team. There's probably a reason for it. I may push back, but I understand her intention.
It's so good. That's definitely something I've been really working on and trying to focus on, and honestly, I do think it can make all the difference. Gosh, Brooke, you're so awesome. This has been such a great conversation. I'm grateful personally, and I also know so many in my community are also grateful for the work that you are willing to do, that you have been willing to do, the messages that you're sharing, the safe place that you give for parents and teens to learn and to listen and to grow closer to themselves, but also to each other. So, thank you for that. Thank you for
Thank
writing
you.
these books. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Such a beautiful conversation. Your insights were incredible. So thank you for
Mm.
being part of, trying to create a space where teens feel loved and appreciated and encouraged. So you're awesome.
Yes. Okay, so we have to first, where can the listeners find you?
Brooke Romney Writes on Instagram is where I'm most active, or you can see, gift guides and things like that on my website at brookeromney.com.
Amazing. And then we have to ask the two questions that we follow or end all of the episodes with. And these are really important to me because I do believe that we should always have something that's really lighting our heart on fire, that's making us excited, that we're looking forward to, that feels like fun and good and but also not at the expense of our peace. And so there's also that key piece of making sure we're protecting that peace in our soul. So the first question is, what is something that is currently lighting your heart on fire?
I have two things, if it's okay to share. I am
Yes.
working on 52 modern manners for kids,
Oh, I love that.
ages like 3 to 8, so that
Mm.
they can start on that path of being able to relate to the world in a really productive and fun and loving way. So I'm working on that, and then I'm
Could you put,
also
like, make sure
working.
to wash your toothpaste out of the sink in that one? Just
That is
rinse
so good.
rin
I'm adding it.
rinse the toothpaste
Adding.
and never leave toothpaste behind, right?
That's really a good one. I'm
Thank you.
adding that. And then the second thing is over probably the next 6 months, I am going to be working on a parenting course for parents of
Amazing.
teenagers on connection parenting. So I'm like full of joy and excitement
So
for
great.
that. I wish there was no details in life. I wish
Mhm.
you didn't have to
I
worry
know.
about filming and all those
Seriously, I am right there with you. Absolutely. Okay, and
things.
then what is something that you do to protect the peace of your soul?
One of the things that I really do is I try to take time every day to connect with people that I love.
Mm.
I've realized that whenever I'm feeling like down or frustrated or like kind of going into like a little hole,
Mhm.
um, I am missing out on connection. And so taking time every day to connect with women or friends or like in a meaningful way with my kids or my
Yeah.
husband, I can get so wrapped up in like an online world, and making sure that I turn that off and have time for in-person connection. That's something that really brings peace and joy back to my life.
I relate to that so, so much. And I think that the importance of asking that question of something that you do to protect the peace of your soul is because oftentimes we get so busy that we actually don't know why we're feeling off. or,
Yeah.
you don't know what is missing. And so I love that you said that you've been able to identify that when you're feeling that way, you're like, oh, I need to connect with the people who really matter to me. So I love that
Yeah.
so, so much. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing,
Thank
and for all
you.
the work you're doing, and for that big, beautiful smile and the hope that you bring to this world.
Thank you, Chelsea. It was a beautiful conversation. Thank you.
That's all we've got for today on the Dance of Growth podcast. One thing that would really help both myself and other women like you is if you would leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Or just share your favorite takeaway from today's episode on social media and tag me at Chelsea Christensen on Instagram. Thank you for listening, and until next time, remember, when you're living a life that has both passion and peace, you are truly living in your purpose. May you always have fire in your heart and peace in your soul.